Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Why we practice meditation? Dear friends, here we will discuss and try to understand step by step and through various approaches how to walk the noble path, particularly how to practice meditation. Therefore, let us make a sincere effort to clearly understand how to cultivate this path, or in other words, how to meditate. Let us begin by asking, why do we meditate? What is the purpose behind it? To answer this, we must first reflect on the nature of dukkha, unhappiness or suffering, and on what the world truly means. To explain why we meditate and what it's for, I'll briefly remind you of some points related to sammaditthi, right view. Based on that, we can explore the mental training and correct practice that help us reach the vision of truth, how the Dhamma arises, how to meditate, and how to begin the practice. We are reminded through the Dhamma that where is the world rooted? It is rooted in dukkha. Kismim lokopadittito, dukkhe lokopadittito. Pihita Sutta in Samyutta Nikaya. In essence, dukkha is just another name for the world. The world is another name for dukkha. This statement reflects a profound insight of the Buddha, found throughout the Theravāda Tipitaka, especially in discourses where the nature of saṁsāra, the cycle of birth and death, and dukkha, unsatisfactoriness or suffering, is explained. So before continuing with the rest, let us explore the above statement. The world is dukkha. In the Samyutta Nikaya, particularly in the Lokasamudaya Sutta and Lokadhamma Sutta, the Buddha equates the world, loka, with dukkha. Not because the physical world is always painful or miserable, but because everything that arises and ceases within the five aggregates, pañcakkhanda, is subject to impermanence, anicca, suffering, dukkha, and not self, anattā. This includes all sensual pleasures that are impermanent and lead to attachment, loss, and eventual grief. All conditioned phenomena subject to change and beyond lasting control. Our mental and physical identity, which we cling to as I and mine, leads to fear, craving, and rebirth. So, the world, in the Buddha's view, does not simply mean the globe or universe. It refers to one's personal, subjective experience made up of cakunca paticca rupa upajjati kakka viññānam, I plus form, I consciousness, and likewise for all senses. Mahatana Sankhaya Sutta in Majjhima Nikaya. This six sense-based world, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, is the world loka the Buddha refers to, and this world is dukkha because it's unstable, unsatisfactory, and ungraspable. Why is this truth often rejected? The reason people may resist or dislike the statement is that it clashes with how we typically view life. Most people associate the world with pleasure and enjoyment, relationships, beauty, success, etc. To say the world is dukkha seems overly pessimistic to most of us. However, the Buddha wasn't denying the presence of joy and pleasure in human life. He was pointing out that even pleasant experiences are unsatisfactory because they are impermanent. They depend on conditions. They lead to craving, clinging, and rebirth. They cannot bring lasting satisfaction. Thus, true wisdom, paññā, sees even pleasure as part of dukkha, not because it feels bad, but because it is unreliable, unstable, and bound to end sooner or later. Why the Buddha taught it that way? By deeply understanding that dukkha and the world are interchangeable, the Buddha aimed to help us become disenchanted, nibbida, with conditioned existence. This dispassion is necessary for liberation, to dissolve craving. Only then does one enjoy lasting happiness. Adittapariyaya Sutta in Samyutta Nikaya and related discourses, where the Buddha states, Evam pasam vikava sutava ariya savako kakkusmim pinibbindati rupesu pinibbindati kakhu viññāni pinibbindati kakhu sampassa pinibbindati nibbindam virajati viragavimukkati. Seeing thus, bhikkhus, the well-taught noble disciple becomes disenchanted with the eye, disenchanted with forms, disenchanted with eye consciousness, disenchanted with contact at the eye. Becoming disenchanted, he becomes dispassionate. Through dispassion, he is liberated. Also, understanding that even the good in the world is bound to dukkha is not to depress us, but to turn our attention inward, toward the unconditioned asankata, toward nibbana, the cessation of dukkha. What, monks, do you call the world? The eye and forms, the ear and sounds, the nose and smell, the tongue and taste, the body and touch, the mind and mental objects. This, monks, is called the world. Loka Sutta Samyutta Nikaya. So, when we say I exist and talk about my mother, father, daughter, son, brothers, sisters, relatives, and when we talk about houses, doors, chairs, land, mountains, cars, wealth, and other things we relate to in life, this entire network of relationship and material existence which we experience across past, present, and future is what we commonly refer to as the world. Seeing the world within one's own body. This so-called world that we cling to is where we encounter birth, sickness, aging, death, separation from loved ones, association with the disliked, the frustration of unfulfilled desires, and both physical and mental pain. This is the true texture of our worldly experience. Generally, we live under the impression that everything around us has always existed, that we were born into a world that preceded us and will continue after we depart. This, we believe, is the nature of ourselves and the world. However, from the perspective of reality, the external world we speak of is experienced within our own body. As explained in the Rohitassa Sutta in Samyutta Nikaya, one can see the entire world within this very body, just a span in length. Nako avuso apatva lokassa antam dukkassa antakiriyam panyapeni. Friend, I do not say that the end of the world can be known, seen, or reached by traveling. Yet, I do not say that there is an end of suffering without reaching the end of the world. Apikākvaham avuso imasmimiva viyamamatte kalevare sanyimhi samanake lokamka panyapemi lokasamudayamka lokanirodamka lokanirodagaminim patipadamka. But it is in this very fathom long body with perception and mind that I declare the world, the origin of the world, the cessation of the world, and the path leading to the cessation of the world. Meaning in context. World, loka, in this sutta does not refer to the physical universe, but rather the world of experience, the aggregates, sense bases, and consciousness arising in the body-mind complex. You cannot escape suffering by running away, even if you travel across galaxies. The end of the world is the end of craving, which can only be achieved through inner realization. This sutta reinforces the principle that liberation is not geographical or external. It is found within through understanding and letting go of clinging and ignorance, the Four Noble Truths. The 6 sense bases and resultant kamma, Within this body, due to the results of past karma, we have inherited certain aggregates, specifically the 6 sense bases: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Through these, we see forms, hear sounds, smell odors, taste flavors, feel bodily sensations, and think about mental objects. These faculties are the results, vipaka, of past action, karma, and cannot be changed. These are not driven by defilements or by fresh karma. This is what's referred to as uppatti bhava, the existence arising from past karma, dependent origination. But due to ignorance, avidya, not knowing the true nature of these aggregates, we mentally construct various perceptions and concepts about them, saṁsāra. Through craving, tanha, and clinging, upadana, we fabricate ideas about people and things outside of us. This mental construction, saṁsāra, is what we call kamma bhava, the active process of creating new existence through volitional formations, saṁkhara. Here, we imagine and project names, identities, stories, and attachments onto the world based on our mental reactions, the aggregates and defilements. So, within the interplay of uppatti bhava, the given or resultant existence, and kamma bhava, the fabricated or volitional existence, we find 2 key components: the 5 aggregates, pañcakkhanda, and the defilements, kilesa. These 2 combine to form our experience of the world. This is how suffering, dukkha, arises. That's why, in the teaching of the noble truth of dukkha, it is said, the 5 clinging aggregates are dukkha. Pañcupādana khandha dukkha. This dukkha arises due to the conjunction of the aggregates and defilements. This is what the Buddha discovered through his own deep investigation, by observing, reflecting, and experimenting until he attained unparalleled wisdom. What is the nearest cause of this suffering? Because we don't understand the true nature of these sense faculties, these vipaka aggregates, we form false mental fabrication, saṁkhara. From that come tanha, craving, and upadana, clinging, leading us to act out of defilement and ignorance. This is the root of dukkha. So, the nearest cause of suffering are ignorance, mental fabrications, craving and clinging, avidya, saṁkhara, tanha, and upadana. If these cease, not after death, but right here in this very life, then the dukkha of birth, aging, sickness, and death can also come to an end. Cessation happens the moment you directly realize this truth through personal experience and wisdom. The path to ending dukkha, sammaditthi, right view. What makes that possible? The cessation of the defilements that produce dukkha. The craving and clinging can be uprooted. The way to do that is through right view, sammaditthi. What is right view? It is the clear understanding of the nature of the vipaka aggregates we have received due to past karma. When we see them as they are, not as permanent, pleasurable, or self, but as impermanent, unsatisfactory, and non-self, then our mind will stop creating mental fabrications around them. In other words, we won't project onto them concepts of I, mine, or my world. Understanding bhava, becoming. When this truth is seen clearly, ignorance ceases, mental fabrications end, and there is no ground for craving and clinging to take hold. Sabba sankhara samato sabbuppadi paṭiccasamuppāda tanhakayo virago nirodho nibbānam. The stilling of all volitional formation, the relinquishment of all attachments, the destruction of craving, dissipation, cessation. This is nibbāna. Sotara Sutta, Anguttara Nikaya, It is upon these mental fabrications that we habitually act with desire, clinging, and emotional attachment. Through that, we build becoming, bhava. We create mental stories and projection that feel real. That very process of becoming is the foundation of suffering. When ignorance, avidya, is uprooted, the mind no longer fabricates signs and symbols, nimitta, that lead to craving and clinging. But for ignorance to be removed, wisdom, vijja, must arise. And wisdom means seeing things as they are. Why can't we see reality as it is? Now, when we say seeing the truth as it may sound simple, but in practice, even the opportunity to think or observe clearly is hard to come by. Why? Because asava, the underlying mental taints, are still active in us. We don't see the aggregates of vipaka, the results of past karma, as they truly are. Instead, we've developed certain habitual patterns, deep-seated tendencies, built up through beginningless saṁsāra. These are the asava. They are defilements that have been embedded in us for a very long time. One of the strongest among them is the kamasava, the taint of sensual desire. This is the tendency to react to whatever we see or hear, as if they are objects of sensual enjoyment, seeing things in terms of my son, my daughter, my mother, my father, my house, land, gold, silver, vehicles, and so on. We've long been conditioned to perceive the sights and sounds as objects of pleasure, as karma objects, habitual misperception and becoming. Because of this habitual way of seeing, when we hear or see something and don't perceive it as it truly is, we react based on the belief that the object is real, external, and capable of giving us lasting satisfaction. This gives rise to another taint, the bhavasava, the taint of becoming. We believe this external thing exists and can bring us happiness, as long as these external things that will give us happiness. So, we develop the expectation that we'll obtain them, keep them, and be fulfilled through them, views and habits. Additionally, not knowing the true nature of the aggregates, we create wrong views. We come to believe in a self, an individual, a person who has performed certain karma in the past and is now being reborn by it. We think of ourselves as fixed beings, a soul or a person who exists across lifetimes. We also think of others, our loved ones, relatives, and even animals, as such beings with souls or selves moving through rebirth. These are habitual mental defilements, asava and anusaya, and wrong views, micchaditti, that have developed within us over time. In this case, a particular wrong view functions as a mental distortion, a form of conceptual confusion, and is itself a taint, asava, that corrupts the mind. The source of taints, avidya, ignorance. All of these taints arise due to avidya, as shown in the paṭiccasamuppāda, dependent origination. Because we don't truly understand the reality of what we see, hear, feel, or think, we fall under the influence of avijjasava, the taint of ignorance. So, you see, kamasava, bhavasava, ditthasava, and avijjasava, these four taints are deeply rooted and very powerful. Because of them, whenever we see, hear, or feel something, we instantly misperceive it. We don't see the truth. Why? The moment we see a visual form, it appears not as just color and shape, rupa, but as something meaningful. My son, my daughter, my house, my belongings, or as a person or object out there. We relate to it not based on its true nature, but based on our conditioned mental taints. And because of these asava, ignorance arises again. And because of that ignorance, asava arises again. These two, asava and avijja, support and maintain each other, forming a cycle that sustains samsara. This is what it means to be born, to die, and to wander endlessly in samsara. Avijjanusaya, the latent tendency of ignorance. But now, let's say we begin to see things as they truly are. Let's say we recognize the truth of what's seen, heard, and felt, namely, that all these are just vipaka aggregates, conditioned by past karma. They are impermanent, anicca, not self, anattā, empty, sunya, merely aggregates of form, elements, and sense spaces. Then we start to understand what I call dukkha arises because I did not understand the true nature of the aggregates. Through this misunderstanding, craving and other defilements arose. Now I see more clearly. The real cause of suffering is craving and the defilements rooted in ignorance. I also understand that when these are completely uprooted, dukkha will come to an end. To uproot them, I must contemplate the aggregates as they are, merely resulting vipaka phenomena, impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. When this understanding arises, gross ignorance no longer clouds the mind. Although subtle latent ignorance, avijjanusaya, may still be present, the crude form of ignorance is no longer operating. That person now knows what needs to be done. They realize, now that I have weakened gross avijja, I must work to remove the remaining asava, subtle latent ignorance, vijjanusaya. And that's why the Buddha taught the practice of samatha, tranquility, and Vipassanā, insight meditation. The four right efforts, samappadana viriya. Keep this in mind, dear devotees. It's these asava that block our ability to see reality. So, the Buddha instructed us to make effort to prevent unarisen asava from arising, to abandon the arisen asava. This is what's referred to as the four right efforts. Kataro samappadana, not giving rise to unarisen unwholesome states, removing the arisen unwholesome states, cultivating unarisen wholesome states, sustaining and increasing the arisen wholesome states. Here, the term unwholesome states directly includes asava. Why can't we see clearly, even after we gain right view, sammaditthi, and see the aggregates for what they are? We might still find it difficult to fully see the truth. Why? Because asavas are still active. We are still heavily conditioned by long-standing habits. From samsara, habits of attaching to karma objects, wealth, family, material things, and viewing others as beings or souls. So even though we've intellectually grasped right view and understood the nature of vipaka aggregates, we still struggle to see the truth directly and clearly. Why? Because asavas are strong. The role of meditation, therefore, to gradually weaken and ultimately destroy these asava, we engage in the practices of samatha and vipassana. These practices help us deconstruct those deep-rooted taints and make the vision of truth possible. So now we know I've understood right view. I've seen the nature of the vipaka aggregates, but I still can't see the truth because the asavas are strong. That very understanding is the beginning of real practice. Eliminating the 5 hindrances, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. So now we need a method to reduce the defilements, asavas. These defilements begin to lessen when the mind becomes concentrated. We now understand that in order to see the truth, we need a collected and settled mind. In other words, concentration samadhi is essential. To reduce defilements, we need to cultivate this mental concentration. That means we have to develop a mind free from the hindering defilements, the 5 hindrances, paņķavarāna. For that, we need to develop samadhi. And to support that concentration, the Buddha taught us 3 essential practices: effort, viriya, mindfulness, sati, and concentration, samadhi. The Blessed One further explained that with diligent effort and the establishment of mindfulness, we are to focus on the 4 domains: body, kaya, feelings, vedana, mind, citta, and mental objects, dhamma. The 4 foundations of mindfulness, satipatthana. Establishing mindfulness in these 4 areas and applying wise effort allows us to reduce the hindrances, cultivate concentration, and eventually reduce or abandon the asavas. As the power of these defilements fades, just a moment of recollection is enough for one's own wisdom to begin seeing the truth as it is. The effort we make must be aimed at 4 tasks: preventing unarisen unwholesome states, abandoning the arisen unwholesome states, developing unarisen wholesome states, sustaining and perfecting arisen wholesome states. In this way, we establish mindfulness of the body, feelings, mind, and mental phenomena. When mindfulness is firmly grounded in these 4 areas, the mind naturally settles into concentration. However, training the mind in this way, establishing mindfulness with effort, is not easy. In fact, it is quite difficult and demanding. Why is it still difficult? Because if someone's body and speech are not restrained, if their actions and words are coarse or harmful, that person will often experience regret and restlessness within their own mind. With such inner conflict, it is not possible to develop a peaceful, concentrated mind. Right speech, right action, right livelihood, or as sila, virtue. So, in order to support concentration, we must restrain the body and speech. The Buddha called this right speech sammavaka, right action samma kammanta, and right livelihood samma ajiva. In short, this is sila, or ethical conduct, living with moral discipline. Therefore, to begin the path, we must start with sila. Whether it's observing the 5 precepts, 8 precepts, or the upasata observance days, we commit ourselves to restraining the body and speech, keeping our behavior from becoming chaotic or unguarded. It's important to remember it's not enough to simply make a verbal promise when we take the precepts, I will not do this or that. That alone won't suffice. Why? Because true sila is not merely a vow, it's about protecting and disciplining the body and speech. And to do that, the mind must also be restrained. In order to restrain the mind, we need to develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness with effort. Only someone who is practicing satipatthana can truly live ethically. The Dhamma clearly says that no one else can genuinely maintain virtue unless they are cultivating mindfulness in this way. So, when we make the effort to live mindfully, grounded in virtue, what happens? Our ethical conduct becomes pure. And when our virtue is pure, the defilements, isavas, and hindrances, varanas, diminish. As a result, the mind becomes concentrated. And once the mind is concentrated, we can see the truth, Yathābhūta, as it is. Mindfulness and wisdom, samatha and Vipassanā. Now we begin to understand the path. Starting from virtue, we make an effort to cultivate mindfulness and develop concentration. This is what the Buddha referred to as viriya, sati, and samadhi. Why do we develop concentration? So we can use our wisdom to see clearly the true nature of the aggregates, khandhas, the result of past karma. We see them as they truly are. When we cultivate the foundations of mindfulness, two essential mental qualities are developed: samatha, calmness of mind; vipassana, insight or clear seeing. These are mentioned as part of the practice of satipatthana through the twin functions of mindfulness, sati, and clear comprehension, sampajañña. If mindfulness is present, it supports cito samatha, the calming of the mind. If clear comprehension is present, it supports right view, sammaditthi, which is insight into the nature of things. So, in the development of sati and sampajañña, we find the growth of samatha and vipassana, calm and insight. This is what it means to practice satipatthana. This is the development of the Noble Eightfold Path, the practice leading to sotapanna, stream enterer. If one truly understands the direction of this practice, they have already heard and comprehended the Four Noble Truths. That means they have had association with noble friends, kalyanamitta, the opportunity to listen to the true Dhamma, saddhamma savana, the development of wise reflection, yoniso manasikara, and the establishment of the Dhamma practice, Dhammanudhamma patipatti. The Buddha taught that these four are the conditions that support the attainment of sotapatti, stream entry. So, if we see the suffering of samsara clearly, and we truly want liberation from it, then there's no choice. We must practice. To practice means to live every moment of our day with mindfulness and wisdom. Even if we begin by sitting in a quiet place for formal meditation, eventually we will train the mind to remain mindful during walking, standing, sitting, and lying down, all four postures. That is when insight begins to arise. At that point, one begins to know within themselves that they are on the path to stream entry, and the Buddha clearly stated, once one becomes a stream enterer in training, whether through faith or through Dhamma, they will not pass away without attaining Sotapanna. This is explained in the Rupa Sutta of the Samyutta Nikaya. A similar assurance is given in the well-known Karaniya Metta Sutta. Whether standing, walking, sitting, or lying down, as long as one is free from drowsiness, let them establish this mindfulness. This, they say, is the divine abiding, the highest dwelling here. Not holding to false views, virtuous and endowed with right vision, having removed craving for sensual pleasures, truly, such a one will never again return to a womb. This means such a practitioner has gone beyond wrong view, lives virtuously, possesses clear vision, and has abandoned attachment to sense pleasures. For such a person, rebirth in this world ends, whether as an arahant in this life, or an anagam who takes final nibbana in the pure abodes. Satipatthana, citta bhavana, and vipassana. Now, let us turn our attention to satipatthana, the foundations of mindfulness, the development of the mind through bhavana, and the way to practice vipassana. From here onward, I won't keep repeating the question, why do we meditate? Why? We have already discussed in length, so you should already know the reason by now. It should be clearly understood. You don't need to keep wandering in doubt about it. This practice, Bhāvanā, must have two complementary aspects. What do I mean by two aspects? With diligent effort, we develop the four foundations of mindfulness, satipatthana, while firmly grounding ourselves in right speech, right action, and right livelihood. That's what it means to establish oneself in sila, virtue. Citta samadhi and Yathābhūta Ñāṇa Dassana, concentration of the mind and knowledge and vision of things as they truly are. Why do we establish ourselves in virtue and pursue this practice? Because as we do this, the defilements and mental hindrances are weakened. The weakening of these unwholesome tendencies is referred to as citta samadhi, the collectedness and stability of mind. At this stage, the mind is calm enough just to observe, to listen, to recall, and in doing so, it begins to see things as they really are. Why do we need to see things in their true nature? Because when we see with true wisdom, there is no mental fabrication arising from ignorance. No new formation occurs that leads to rebirth within the three realms of existence. Without such formations, craving, tanha, has no nourishment. If craving does not arise, then clinging and becoming cannot take root. When that happens, suffering, dukkha, comes to an end. When we see things in their true nature, we see this through wisdom. We understand this. How do we practice Satipatthana? Now let's clearly understand how do we practice Satipatthana with this kind of commitment. I will not repeat this explanation again and again later on. So please pay careful attention and remember what's being presented here. That way, again and again, you won't need to go to a monk later on and say, "Venerable Sir, I've now practiced mindfulness of breathing, Ānāpānāsati, or I've done meditation on repulsiveness, or I've observed the bodily postures. I'm beginning to see the foulness in the body, and my mind no longer wanders here and there. What should I do next?" You won't need to ask such question. Why? Because you've already clearly understood why you are practicing and how it is to be practiced with wisdom, not blindly. You've also understood that it must begin with sila, with restraint, and that the practice is ultimately for the purpose of seeing the truth of khandha, dhatu and ayatana, the aggregates, elements and sense bases, and arriving at Yathābhūta Ñāṇa Dassana, the direct seeing of things as they truly are. Kayanupassana, mindfulness of the body. Within the Satipatthana Sutta, two key qualities are constantly emphasized: Satī, mindfulness, and sampajañña, clear comprehension. Let's begin with the first section, Kayanupassana, contemplation of the body. This section contains the following parts: the Ānāpanā, mindfulness of breathing; the Iriyapatā, awareness of postures; the Sati Sampujañña, mindful clear comprehension. These are grouped as a distinct part of the practice. Then there are the other sections. The Dvatimsakara, contemplation of the 32 parts of the body. The Chatu Dhatu Vavatana, contemplation of the 4 elements. The Navasavatika, the 9 charnel ground contemplations. In total, there are 6 contemplations under Kayanupassana with 2 main characteristics. The first 3, Ānāpānā, Iriyapatā and Sati Sampajañña, are preceded by Samatha, tranquility practice. They aim to establish mindfulness. Wisdom follows as support, but mindfulness is primary. The other 3, contemplation of 32 body parts, 4 elements, and charnel ground, are preceded by Vipassanā, insight practice. Here, wisdom is primary, with mindfulness supporting. So, both Samatha and Vipassana practices contain these 2 essential qualities: mindfulness, Sati, and clear comprehension, sampajañña. In Samatha, mindfulness is primary and wisdom supports. In Vipassana, wisdom is primary and mindfulness supports. Why two aspects, samatha and vipassana, to guard against the assaults of defilements? In the Ajita Manavaka Panya Sutta in Kuddaka Nikaya, there's a question asked by the sage Ajita Manavaka to the Blessed One. Savanti Sabbadi Sota. Do the streams of defilements flow everywhere? He is asking, in this world, defilements are constantly pouring in like a flood. What can stop them? What blocks their flow? What exactly, he asks? These streams of defilement enter through the 6 sense doors and carry beings away. Once swept up in them, one cannot easily rise again. So how do we restrain and block these floods? The Blessed One answers, Yani sotani lokasmim, sati tesam, nivaranam, sotanam samvaram brumi, panyayati bidhiyar. Whatever streams there are in the world, mindfulness, sati, is their restraint. I declare mindfulness as the means of controlling them, and they are ultimately sealed off through wisdom, panya. So it is through these two qualities, mindfulness and wisdom, that one blocks and restrains the onrush of defilements. What are these defilements? They are the asava and varana, the unwholesome influxes and hindrances that prevent us from seeing the truth as it is. Through samatha, the defilements are calmed, subdued. Through vipassana, based on wisdom and direct seeing, defilements are not allowed to arise again. They are sealed off at their root. How to develop? Mindfulness of breathing, Ānāpānāsati. Now, before we dive deeper, let's revisit a key phrase. Satitesam nivaranam. Mindfulness restrains them. That is, it's mindfulness that blocks the floods of defilements. Earlier, we spoke about this when discussing the Kayanupassana section, mindfulness of the body, particularly the first 3 practices. Ānāpanā, mindfulness of breathing. Iriyapatā, awareness of postures. Sati sampājañña pabbā, mindful clear comprehension. These 3 are directly aimed at establishing mindfulness and increasing its strength. They help protect the mind from the grip of the defilements. So, let's begin by looking at how to develop Ānāpānāsati, mindfulness of breathing, a practice uniquely suited to sharpening and stabilizing the mind. The special nature of Ānāpānāsati. Dear friends, among all the meditation techniques taught by the Buddha, Ānāpānāsati stands out. There are 40 meditation subjects in total, known as the 40 kammatthanas, given by the Buddha for developing concentration, that is, for training the mind and overcoming the hindrances, varana, and taints, asava. Out of those 40 methods, 39 share one common approach, and Ānāpānāsati stands apart. Why is that? Because in most of those methods, the other 39, the mind is directed through wise reflection, yoniso manasikara. You replace unwholesome, defiled thoughts with wholesome, skillful ones. You reflect with wisdom again and again, gradually abandoning mental defilements. It's like trying to stop a boat that's moving fast in one direction. You take the same oar that helped it move forward, and now use it in the opposite direction to slow it down. That's how those meditations work. You use thought and reflection to settle the mind. But with Ānāpānāsati, something remarkable happens. From the very beginning, this practice is aimed at quieting all mental activity. It's not about replacing one object with another. It's about letting go of all objectives altogether. That's why, although this practice requires much more mindfulness and wisdom, it's also exceptionally powerful. Only for the mindful, and wise. In the Ānāpānāsati Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha makes this very clear. Naham bhikkhave mutta sati sasa asampajana sasa Ānāpānāsati Bhavanam vadami. Bhikkhus, I do not speak of the development of mindfulness of breathing for one who is forgetful and lacks clear comprehension. What does this mean? If a person is often distracted, losing attention, unable to maintain focus, failing to keep the mind on a single object, if they lack the energy and clarity of wisdom, then Ānāpānāsati is not the method for them. This practice is suitable for someone who possesses strong mindfulness, a genuine interest, and a powerful intention to develop the mind. Ānāpānāsati and the 7 factors of awakening. In another perspective, Ānāpānāsati is also called Bojjhanga Bhāvanā, the cultivation of the 7 factors of enlightenment. Why? Because from this single practice you can develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness, Satipatthana, the 7 Bojjhangas, mindfulness, investigation, energy, joy, tranquility, concentration, equanimity, and eventually reach liberation and the fruit of liberation with a stream entry, arahantship, or anything in between. So you see, this practice can carry you all the way, if done properly, with the support of Vipassanā, insight. But for now, let's focus just on the part that helps establish mindfulness. How to begin Ānāpānāsati, awareness of natural breath. To get started, it's best to practice in a posture where you can remain still for a longer period. Once you are familiar with the practice and the mind has been trained, you'll be able to call on mindfulness even in any posture, sitting, standing, walking, or lying down. But in the beginning, especially if you are new to meditation, it's hard to hold on to mindfulness. The mind can drift off quickly. That's why it requires strong determination, clear intention, and wise effort. The Buddha gave clear instruction on how to start. Aranyagato va rukamulagato va sunyagaragato va nanisiddhati pallankam abhusitva ujum kayam paniddaya parimukam satim uppattapetva. Whether one goes to a forest, the root of a tree, or an empty hut, room, one sits down, crosses the legs into a lotus or half-lotus posture, sets the body upright, and establishes mindfulness in front. Maha Satipatthana Sutta Digha Nikaya. That in front, Parimukkham Satim Uppattapetva, means placing awareness at the front of the face, either at the tip of the nose or the upper lip, where the breath is felt. Choosing your focal point, nose or upper lip. In the Abhidhamma Vibhanga, when describing how absorption, jhana, arises, it explains that mindfulness must be firmly established. It specifically says, mindfulness is established at the tip of the nose or the upper lip, mukha nimitta. Why are both of these options given? Because it depends on the individual's temperament. For some, it's easier to stay focused on the sensation at the upper lip. It feels more stable, more noticeable. For others, the breath is clearer at the tip of the nose. Choose whichever is more natural and effective for you. The important thing is that the mind stays put, doesn't run off, and you can watch the breath without strain. Summary of key points discussed so far. Ānāpānāsati is unique among the meditation subjects. It is a direct method for calming all mental activity. It requires strong mindfulness and wisdom. The Buddha specifically said it's not for the forgetful or unclear-minded. It supports the development of the Bojjhangas and leads toward liberation. it must be practiced in a suitable posture, ideally sitting upright in a quiet place at the beginning. The breath is observed at the nostrils or upper lip, depending on what suits the meditator best. Establishing mindfulness, choosing the right focus point. Now, dear friends, you don't have to use both spots, the upper lip and the nostril base, when meditating. The Buddha didn't say we must switch between the two or use both. Instead, what's important is to find which one works best for you based on your temperament. Here's how to do that. Close your eyes and bring to mind the image of your face. Then, in your mind's eye, try to focus on either your upper lip or the tip of your nose. See which one feels more distinct to your awareness. If the upper lip feels clearer, more stable, or easier to sense, then that's where you should gently place your attention. If the nostril area stands out more naturally, then let that be your focus. But if you're still unsure, if neither spot feels very distinct, there's a simple method you can use to help establish your mindfulness. You may use a finger to establish awareness. Try gently placing your finger on your upper lip, not to keep it there, but just to bring awareness to that spot. Once your finger touches your upper lip, bring your attention fully to the point of contact. Then remove your finger, but leave your mind there, fully aware of the sensation at that location. That spot is now your mindfulness anchor, your Satī nimitta. If instead the tip of the nose feels better, do the same. Lightly touch the base of the nose with your finger, become fully aware of that sensation, and then remove your finger. Let your attention rest on that area with clarity and stillness, staying with the anchor point. Once your mindfulness is well established at your chosen spot, whether upper lip or nostrils, keep it there. And as you inhale and exhale, the breath will come and go without needing to chase after it. You don't need to follow the breath inside the body. You don't need to go outward with it either. You simply stay at your anchor point with awareness settled right there, and you know that the breath is moving in and out. Whether the breath is long or short, that's not something you have to analyze. Just stay anchored, and you will naturally know when the breath changes. This knowing is not intellectual. It's through direct experience, through mindfulness. Breathing with awareness, not with movement. So, to be clear, you are not shifting your attention along with the breath. You are not following it inside as it goes in or outside as it goes out. You are just firmly settled at the tip of the nose or the upper lip, whichever you choose, and you remain aware of the breath as it brushes past that point. This is like looking steadily at an object while being vaguely aware of what moves in front of it, without shifting your gaze. The simile of the water bowl. Let's take a simple simile to make this clear. Imagine I'm sitting here giving a Dhamma talk, and right in front of me is a clear bowl of water. I'm watching it calmly, attentively. Now someone walks back and forth in front of that bowl. Maybe they go further away, maybe they come closer. But even though they move, I don't look at them, I don't turn my head or shift my eyes. I simply stay focused on the bowl with full awareness. But still I know with peripheral awareness that someone is walking by. In the same way, you stay focused on the anchor point, the tip of the nose or the upper lip, and even though the breath comes and goes, you know it without chasing it. This is the practice of Satipatthana. This, dear friends, is how you establish mindfulness in breath meditation. This is what is meant by developing Satipatthana, the foundations of mindfulness, particularly mindfulness of breathing. You are not thinking about anything else. You are not letting the mind drift away. You are just staying steadily, silently, with awareness rooted at the mindfulness anchor. As mindfulness deepens, the stability of attention grows. You are aware of the nostrils or the upper lip and aware of the in-breath and out-breath, but not shifting your mind with them. The breath becomes something known in the background, while mindfulness remains fully grounded. What if the mind wanders? Of course, it will wander. The mind has old habits, chasing thoughts, memories, sounds, and plans. Sometimes someone outside might speak, or you remember something from earlier today. The mind starts thinking about it. You might even build up a whole internal story. But the moment you realize the mind has wandered, that it has strayed from the anchor, then you gently but firmly bring it right back. This is what mindfulness does. You acknowledge the distraction and then re-establish attention on the nostril or the lip, whichever is your chosen point. You say to yourself, the mind went off. Let's return. Let me place the mind back at the anchor with determination. And then you continue breathing in, aware, breathing out, aware, not following the breath, not wandering away, just staying. Be patient and keep returning. It's very normal for the mind to go off again and again. Don't get frustrated. Just recognize it quickly and bring it back just as quickly. That act of returning again and again is exactly how mindfulness grows, and that is the beginning of wisdom. When the mind wanders, keep bringing it back. Dear friends, even though we try to stay with the breath, the mind keeps wandering off again, doesn't it? But each time it wanders, we gently bring it back. We remind ourselves, stay with the anchor point. And again, we continue being mindful of the in-breath and the out-breath. Then we forget again and again. We bring it back. This going off and coming back again and again, even if just for a few minutes, that effort itself is meditation. This is what we mean when we say training the mind, not letting the mind run to the past or future. This training is really about not letting the mind keep running into the past or darting off into the future. We are gently teaching it to stay. We are helping it become familiar with staying present. Now think for a moment. If the mind would just stay where we place it, if it would remain calmly on the breath or the anchor point, then we wouldn't need to meditate at all. But it doesn't, does it? That's why we need this kind of practice. Why the mind wanders so much? Often people say, I can't meditate, my mind is running all over the place. And so they give up. But listen closely, dear friends. That's exactly why the Buddha gave us this practice. Because the mind runs, we have to train it. Because it won't stay, we have to gently guide it again and again. In the beginning, it feels impossible. At first, when you try to stay with the breath even for 5 or 10 minutes, it might feel like you're trying to hold on to something slippery, like wild vines. It may feel like your mind is the worst in the world. Even if everyone else can train their minds, mine can't be tamed. That's how deeply entangled our minds have become. But something shifts with effort. Still, if you try in the morning, even just for a bit, even if the mind keeps running away and you keep gently bringing it back, you will notice something surprising. By the time you sit for meditation in the evening, it feels a little different. You can hold the mind steady for just a bit longer than in the morning. Even if it's still hard, even if you can't stay fully anchored, you've made progress. It might still feel like you can't hold mindfulness for even a few seconds, but now you find you're able to stay with it just a little more than before. The strength of repeated effort. This is how it works. The mind runs away. You notice it. You bring it back. It runs away again. You bring it back again. By repeating this again and again, the mind gradually becomes less slippery, steadier. This repeated effort is what strengthens the mindfulness anchor, the Satī nimitta. And from there, meditation deepens. Even 3 or 4 days can make a difference. If you keep this up, even for just 3 or 4 days in a row, you will feel a noticeable shift. You will start to feel more strength, more steadiness in your practice. And when that happens, it builds confidence. Even if things are still difficult, you'll feel, this is working, I can keep going. Why do we need to train this way? Now you might ask, why do we have to go through all this? Because, friends, our minds have never been trained in this way. They've always run behind thoughts, desires, and distractions. That's why the untrained mind gets overwhelmed with hindrances, with sensual craving, ill will, restlessness, and all the rest. But as soon as mindfulness is firmly anchored, those hindrances begin to fade. They simply have no room to grow when the mind stays steady. The beginning of Satipatthana. So remember this. All of this effort, bringing the mind back again and again, this is Satipatthana. This is the very start of the path. When we keep placing the mind back on the breath, we are laying the foundation for deep mindfulness. Right now, it may feel like we can't even hold it for a few seconds. But that's all right. Little by little, that foundation gets stronger. Mindfulness of the entire breath body. Eventually, as stability grows, you begin to experience the breath more fully. You are no longer just aware that I'm breathing. You start to feel the whole breath clearly, the beginning, the middle, and the end of the in-breath, and the beginning, middle, and end of the out-breath. This is what's meant by Sabbakaya Patisamveda. Being fully aware of the whole body of the breath. And to come to that level, the mind must settle well into the anchor, the turning point in practice. This point is where real change happens. Even without talking about Nibbana or about life after death, just in this life, you begin to see how valuable this practice is. You will notice that the usual mental chatter starts to quiet down. Those restless inner dialogues, the regrets, worries, self-criticisms, all begin to settle. Because usually, an untrained mind keeps dragging us into suffering. It keeps bringing up things we said or did or didn't say or didn't do. And it's that same mind that punishes us with guilt, fear, restlessness. But once we train it, once it stabilizes in the breath, that harsh self-talk softens, the agitation fades, a gentle silence arises. This is the fruit of effort of returning the mind over and over until it knows how to stay. And at that point, friends, whether or not we reach the highest goals just yet, will still taste real peace. The result is peace in this very life, a peace that grows day by day, a joy that doesn't depend on anything outside, a quiet confidence that, yes, this mind, my mind, can be trained, and from there the path opens wide. Mindfulness of breathing, the practice of Ānāpānāsati. Sabbākāya patisamved asa tisami sikkati. I will train myself to be aware of the whole body of breath. When one reaches this stage, friends, it is possible to directly experience the deep quality of Ānāpānāsati, mindfulness of breathing. This practice is truly profound and subtle, very subtle indeed. So, don't be discouraged by difficulties. Instead, try bit by bit, patiently and repeatedly. When you lose focus, bring it back again. When you give up, try again. Experiencing the pleasure and calm of the breath. As you become mindful of the whole breathing body, you will gradually experience a natural joy and calmness arising within. The restless and troublesome movements of the mind begin to settle. Meditation is like breaking through a tough barrier. Little by little, you start to taste its sweetness. This happens because repeated mindful breathing leads to the calming of mental chatter, the settling of thoughts, the settling of mental fabrication, vitarka. When the mind settles from all those restless thoughts, the breathing body becomes calmer and smoother. This corresponds to the words Pasambayam kaya sankharam asasisami sikkati. Pasambayam kaya sankharam pasasi sikkati. Meaning, by staying mindful of the breath body repeatedly, the satta nimitta, the mental fabrications become peaceful. Becoming familiar with subtle breathing. At this point, although the breath may not be strongly felt, the knowing of breathing, the awareness of in and out breaths becomes clear. You may not feel the air itself strongly, but you know the movement of breathing with precision. This leads to a subtle, pleasant sensation, much like gently stroking a soft part of the body brings soothing comfort. The practice is like water settling after disturbance. The Buddha said, monks, just as raindrops falling into a dusty place settle the dust, in the same way, the practice of mindfulness of breathing, Ānāpānāsati, calms and settles discursive thoughts, vitakka. The reward of persistent effort. If you persist in this practice for a week or two, despite difficulties, you will feel a genuine transformation. You will begin to truly enjoy the benefits mentally and physically and realize that the effort you put in was worthwhile. Remaining mindful of the whole body of breathing. The breath can be subtle, rough, short or long, but becoming familiar with these qualities, you develop a refined mindfulness. Once the mind becomes steady on this whole breathing body, it no longer wanders. The anchor point of mindfulness. Imagine a calf accustomed to its tether. Wherever it goes, it returns to the post. Similarly, your mind learns to return to the mindfulness anchor at the nostrils or the upper lip. Even when busy with other things, the mind naturally returns to this point without effort. The next step after Ānāpānāsati. Once the practice of mindfulness of breathing is well established, the next stage is to develop kayanupassana, mindfulness of the body itself. This is the next section of Satipatthana, starting with Iriyapatha Bhāvanā, mindfulness of bodily activities. For those accustomed to training, this transition can happen quickly. Final encouragement. Until then, continue to train the mind to remain steadily aware of the breath at the nostrils or upper lip. Over time, the mind becomes sharper and clearer. This clarity helps to uproot defilements by abandoning the hindrances and strengthens insight. For further study, see the Majjhima Nikaya, the Kayagata Sati Sutta. To understand the division between breath practice and mindfulness of bodily activities, may all wholesome qualities arise from these teachings, and may those who listen be protected by devas, divine beings, and supported by the merits of this practice. May all beings be blessed with health, peace, and happiness. May the teachings inspire deep insight and lead all to the ultimate peace of Nibbana. Appamadina sampadeta. Diligently do what must be done for your own benefit. Closing remarks. The Ruvan Saranai. This brief Dhamma booklet is presented based on the unsurpassed and compassionate teachings of our great compassionate and fully enlightened one, the Buddha. It reveals the nature of ignorance and suffering, and rests upon the timeless truth taught to gods and humans alike. Following a recent inspiring discourse given by a venerable monk endowed with great compassion, this presentation is offered as a gift of Dhamma, with the sincere wish to assist you in gaining a clearer understanding and help you progress on the path to Nibbana. This is the first booklet of 3, focusing on the foundational practices of mindfulness, Ānāpānāsati Bhāvanā. Mindfulness of breathing, this booklet. Iriyapatha, Bhāvanā. Awareness of bodily postures, Sati Sampajanya Bhavana. Mindfulness and clear comprehension, foundation of insight meditation. Vipassanā. May this offering bring clarity, inspiration, and strength to your practice. May this teaching, grounded in the Four Noble Truths, suffering, its origin, cessation, and the path leading to cessation, be a guiding light for all sincere seekers of liberation. The cycle of saṁsāra, driven by ignorance, craving, clinging, and becoming, causes suffering. It is my hope that you will come to realize that this cycle can be ended in this very life, not postponed to some future existence. This opportunity is precious, rare, and open to all being in the world. It is neither hidden nor conditioned, but the open path to liberation. If this teaching resonates with you, please accept it with an open heart. You will then understand that suffering is not caused by external phenomena, but is constructed within the mind, founded upon ignorance, craving, and attachment. Impermanent, painful, and selfless phenomena giving rise to false feeling of permanence, pleasure, and I constitute the root causes of samsaric suffering. Given such a great opportunity, how unfortunate it would be to reject it and remain bound to continuous suffering. The path taught by the Buddha is not confined to any religion, caste, gender, or social category. It is accessible to all. For the wise and sincere practitioner, it begins with training the mind, Bhāvanā, deepens through investigation, and culminates in wisdom. This is the sole path to liberation within this precious human life, free from rebirth and not to be missed. This path is the Noble Eightfold Path, based on right view, right intention, and right concentration, fostering virtue, concentration, and wisdom. Through it, the illusion of self is shattered, craving dissolves, and becoming ceases. This is not a mere opinion but a verifiable truth, directly testable by one's own experience. The contents of this work are primarily based on a recent Satipatthana Dhamma discourse delivered by the Venerable Mankadavala Sudassana Thera. Supporting references have also been drawn from the teachings of my respected teachers, Venerable paṭiccasamuppāda Thero and Venerable Rakwane Gnanasiha Thero, as well as from the Tipitaka and the Pali Canon. This offering is made with the heartfelt wish that you may come to a deeper understanding of the truth, to free yourself from the false notion of I, to clearly see the nature of suffering and its cessation, and to realize how all formation rise and pass away due to causes, and that when the causes cease, the formation to come to cessation. May these words nurture the wholesome faculties within your mind and senses. May they inspire energy and steadfastness to pursue Satipatthana Vipassanā practice, leading you to directly perceive the impermanence, suffering, and non-self nature of phenomena and glimpse the immortal reality of Nibbana. Do not waste this precious time. Life is valuable but fleeting, and every moment is an opportunity to step from darkness into light through the Buddha's path. As the Blessed One said, do not be lazy, do not waste your time. Life is uncertain, death is certain. Dhammapada. Therefore, break free from samsara by breaking the chain of becoming. Read this Dhamma text with great care, cultivate virtuous conduct, strengthen your meditation, and witness Nibbana here and now with clarity and direct experience. May the merit accumulated by sharing this Dhamma encourage your wisdom, guide you along the path to Nibbana, and grant you true liberation. Through the wholesome merits generated by this Dhamma offering, may Venerable paṭiccasamuppāda Mahathera, Venerable Mankadavala Sudasana Thera, Venerable Rakwane Gnanasiha Thera, my other respected spiritual teachers, mentors, and all virtuous spiritual friends be blessed with peace, good health, and long life. May they remain steadfast in upholding the Dhamma and realize the supreme bliss of Nibbana. May these merits also be dedicated to my beloved departed parents, lay life teachers, relatives, friends, all living teachers, well-wishers, and contributors. May it likewise benefit you, the practitioner, who earnestly applies the Dhamma and follows the path to liberation. May it serve as a cause for the ending of samsaric suffering with ease, clarity, and comfort. May all rejoice in this wholeheartedly. May you awaken to wisdom. May you be freed from all suffering. May you realize the eternal peace of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.